when you have a lower back issue, okay, and you have a disc herniation or a disc bulge or impingement, the most common area is the last one, which is L5, lumbar 5, S1, right? So the most common disc to be herniated or compressed is the last one down, L5, S1. That nerve root feeds into the sciatic nerve. It is literally like the wire that plugs into the next wire, okay? So if you have compression up at the outlet, the lights are gonna be flickering, right? So people that have pain in the leg, a lot of times will come into me thinking that they have a hamstring issue or a leg issue, a knee issue, and it's coming from there.
An entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow was cracking.
What up, guys? Welcome back to the Creatures of Habit podcast. I've got a guy on the podcast today that I'm excited to share with you. I really want to understand what a chiropractor does. I want to understand what chiropractic work is and how it is different than your regular traditional either body work or Western medicine. And so I've got a buddy on the show today. His name is Dr. Johnny Alexander. He treats everybody I know, plus professional athletes, celebrities, across the board. He's got a practice in New York City called Warrior NYC. He's got a few different offices, and he does a lot of the practitioner work himself as well. But I had the pleasure of being able to get some treatment from Dr. Johnny. If I lived in New York City, I would be there every single week without a question of a doubt, because as you guys know, if you've been following along my journey, my lower back is my Achilles heel, unfortunately. So we might actually I got to figure out a way to get into Dr. Johnny's office more, but he has been a chiropractor for 10 years. He launched his own practice in 2018, and he's been cracking backs and everything else for a long time. He spent time with some professional sports teams, working on the squad as their sports med doc, and really working on them, in regards to body work. So I'm really, really excited to dive into what it means to be a chiropractor, what chiropractic work is, how it can help benefit you, and why you should potentially be thinking about stepping into a chiropractor's office. Dr. Johnny, welcome to the show, man.
First of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. We need to do this more often. Like you were saying, if you were in New York City, the lower back thing that you're dealing with would already be taken care of. But I'm going to work with you the best I can anyways. We'll figure out a way just to kind of get you some help when you're around. I know that you're here more often than you think, so there's always some stuff you can be doing at home. But also with a disc issue, it is unfortunately just one of those things that it's hard to reverse it. It's kind of like once it's set into motion, you have to kind of just take that new set of circumstances and work around it. I've helped people that have had really severe disc issues to people that didn't think it was that bad and started getting worse, right? It's just more about the lifestyle. And I know that you're somebody that prioritizes activity, being active, certainly fitness background, gym background, right? So people like you and I are just more susceptible to disc injuries because of the demand that we put on our body, same as like any athlete. But we are also more equipped with the tools to fix it, like having muscle strength, having flexibility, understanding certain exercises, and just having a better overall appetite for wellness.
When I went to your office the first time, I walked in and I showed you my MRI, which is not pretty, right? And you said to me pretty much verbatim, and I thought that I thought you were going to look at this thing and be like, oh man, you're screwed, dude. I don't know if I can help you. But you literally looked at me and you said, I see this all day long.
Every day.
And also, not only do I see this all day long, but some people come in here with an image like this and show no symptoms.
Right.
And then there's people like you that come in with an image like this and they've got symptoms out the butt.
Right.
So, something that I have noticed over time is really when I am focused on the muscles surrounding my lower back, when I spend the time, a tool that I've been using that I am madly in love with, like I love the So Right.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you know.
Yeah, of course. Just right in there.
So I use the So Right more on my back and on my glutes because there's not another tool that I think is is you're able to position to dig deep into the muscle, like the Pso-Right. So I use the Pso-Right, and the truth is that I, like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this disc thing, man, the disc thing. And realistically, when I use the Pso-Right and I get deep into the muscle, the pain that I think is my disc injury goes away.
Right.
Because I've warmed up the muscles, I've massaged the muscles, I've gotten blood into the muscles around. So just I want to hear about.
There's so much to unpack.
Yeah,
here, right?
I want to hear. I just want to understand, and I want the listeners to understand how a chiropractor thinks about this stuff.
So first of all, thanks for trusting me with your care, and thanks for coming in, because what a cool opportunity to work with someone like you. And to your point earlier, the MRI finding, it is so hard to predict what that patient's symptomology is going to look like just based off of an image, right? So if I took 10 guys off the street and they were all the same age, height, weight, demographic, right? And we took an MRI of all of their spines, lower back, let's just narrow down there. 8 out of 10 of them would have some sort of level of disc herniation, right? Depending on, how bad it is, there could be varying degrees. There could be minimal, could be really big disc herniations showing on that MRI. It is so coordinated with their symptoms. So some people can come in with debilitating pain and they're dying. They're just begging for an MRI. I'm looking for an MRI because I'm thinking, wow, this person showing me some neurological symptoms that are red flags for me, right? Beyond pain, there's weakness, numbness, tingling, reflex things that are not presenting as something that I should be just putting my hands on, right? So we want to get the image. We want to get all the information that we can. So we'll send them out for the MRI and it comes back relatively normal, or a really small disc issue. And this person usually is a little bit disappointed. They're like, well, I don't understand. Like, where is this pain coming from? Muscle is a huge generator of pain and it's often overlooked. So I can't just predict what your disc is going to look like on MRI based off of how you show up and present with symptoms. So the MRI, I always use the rule, if it's going to change the way that I treat you, then I'll go get it. Otherwise, I try to work in a certain realm of a few visits or a little bit of time to see how you respond to conservative care. Because the thing is, if you go get an MRI and the disc is showing maybe a mild to moderate or even, moderate to severe disc herniation, the therapy and the treatment is often going to remain the same. Those are still really good candidates for the things that we're already doing with you: physical therapy, chiropractic, massage, sports medicine, acupuncture. So a lot of times I wait on the MRI because I'm like, it's not going to really change the way that I treat you. Even if it shows a disc, we can assume there's probably a disc in there that's disrupted based off of the statistics I gave you earlier. But unless it's going to really change the course of care, I don't think that's an immediate need. What do I mean by course of care? If you have a disc that's protruding and it's actually causing, inflammation on the nerve root, or there's something that is out in outer space, it's protruded to the point where it's, kind of dissected from the actual disc and there's a piece just lodged somewhere in your back, that is a surgical case most of the time. So in that case, no matter what I do with you, that disc is kind of far beyond repair. And the sooner we get it fixed, the better.
You actually believe in surgery.
I do.
If there's a fragment of disc. Yeah. So interestingly, in 2012, when I had my injury, there was a fragment of disc that they could see in the MRI that was sitting on the sciatic nerve.
Right.
Now, obviously, that fragment of disc is no longer sitting on the sciatic nerve. It obviously shifted. Yeah. Because the doctors were telling me, you absolutely need surgery for this. There is no way around it. And so what would they have done? Would they have gone in there and just removed that piece?
Yeah, the most common surgery would be called a microdiscectomy. Micro meaning it's a really small incision and it's taking part of the disc out. So if you look at your disc and I'm going to use the old man comparison to the jelly donut. If you have a disc at every level between your spine, so each bone has a little bit of like a fibrocartilage structure as almost like a shock absorbing brake pad in between. So your whole spinal column is made up of bone and then those discs, right? So the disc it has a nucleus, which is kind of like the jelly in the donut. It's the inside part. And over time, the weight of the world, gravity just starts to compress on your lower back, push down on those discs. And eventually there could be a tear or a break in the outer ring of that disc and it's going to herniate. So when it herniates, the jelly in that donut can come out a little bit and sit right on the nerve root, which is right close to that disc, and cause sciatica and neuro symptoms. or it can go way out to the point where it actually breaks off. And now it's not causing as much of that disruption to the nerve root, but it is still a fragment of structure. And when you put something that's where it's not supposed to be, it's obviously going to disrupt the tissue around it. So that can be really quite painful. So at the time, they were probably looking at this fragment of disc that had broken off and thinking, we really need to just cut in there and get it out. There's other options, but that would have been the most likely surgery given.
And have you seen success in these microdiscectomies?
Yeah, it's getting better. 10 years ago, I would have tried to keep people away from it as long as possible. But the thing is that nowadays the science is better around it. And I know it sounds weird coming from a chiropractor, right? Like I'm not pro surgery, but in a certain case of the patient, I want what's best for every patient, even if it means a surgery to remove something or make something easier for me to do my job. What does that mean? Getting that piece of disc out. But now what's happened is that your disc is missing part of its core. So there is just inherently going to be more problems. So we have to now work together to create stability around your lower back, to create better soft tissue, mobile hips, look at your exercises, correct things that you're doing wrong, posture, sleep. I mean, we could literally do this forever, right? But the problem is a lot of people see that surgery as a quick fix, thinking that that is going to forever all cure them. And it doesn't. You're more likely to then have herniations and things going on in the future. So I'm a fan of surgery if it is the right patient, and we still do all of the stuff that we would do either way, before and after.
Like when people think of chiropractor, they literally think of most people don't even know what an adjustment is, but most people think of an adjustment. All they think about is the crack. Like they think of the neck crack, they think of the back crack. So can you just walk us through like the philosophy of that?
Before you met me, was that your initial
Well, I've been to chiropractor before.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've been battling this back thing forever, and so I would love there to be and I'm sure down the road, there's going to be a solution for people that have degenerative discs, right? I'm sure that they're right now, I know for sure that they have synthetic discs that they're putting into people's neck that are actually working.
Yeah.
Right?
The technology will keep getting better, but anytime you disrupt the body, there are going to be side effects. There's going to be some sort of give and take there.
Right.
So my hope is that those disc surgeries continue to improve and the knowledge around them gets better, but people also continue to see the need for the care that I do and the things that are going to be preventative. And I think that it is an eye-opener to have a big injury, especially, you could probably talk about this, but I remember when I had a disc issue, because everybody has it eventually, and mine was CrossFit related, and I was 26. I remember thinking, I'm too young for this. And then I really started looking at the research, and younger guys are more likely to have a disc herniation than older people. People would think that the older you get, the worse that those conditions become. It is actually more likely for a guy between the age of 20 and 40 to have a disc herniation than it is a guy for between 40 and 60. Why is that? When you get older, things are already kind of dehydrated and the bones are kind of becoming brittle. There isn't as much of that nucleus and that soft stuff to kind of herniate. It's more the arthritis of the bone pain and other structures that are getting broken down. The people who are most likely to blow a disc out is you and me. And there are people who are active and they put themselves in positions. So I think that as long as you're taking care of yourself, you understand what risks are involved in the surgery, but also once you have had that surgery or had that injury, you really do change your lifestyle and some of the things that contributed to it. For me, I was doing CrossFit competitively. I was doing Romanian deadlifts. The guy I was working out with was twice my size, and he was on gear, and I was trying to keep up with him. And I woke up one day and my foot was numb, and I didn't quite think, okay, I have a disc issue. I just thought that there was some impingement there. Started working through it, and then I got the MRI because I wanted to know why it wasn't getting better. And I had a disc herniation, and I had to work for about 6 months. And to this day, I do not do heavy RDLs with a barbell. I changed the way I do that, kettlebells and stuff. I've had to look at my ergonomics for my desk chair. Long car rides were a thing that really kill me. I had to change the way that I, posture myself in a long car ride. So there are things that I do now at 36 that I always think about that disc issue at 26 when I'm doing them. And it's really changed my life, but in a good way, because, I would knock on wood, but I feel better and in better shape now than I did 10 years ago. Not many people can say that.
Yeah, I mean, I battle with chronic back pain daily, every single day, without
Yeah.
a doubt. And I think I wish I was a little bit more like you, and I'm starting to get there, where I do things that I know are going to aggravate my lower back. Like I am madly in love with conventional deadlift. I'm madly in love with the movement.
Yeah.
I'm not, deadlifting 415 pounds right now, but I still deadlift conventionally with tempo, and I know that I'm running the risk.
Yeah.
I've just got to be better, and I've got to be smarter, and I probably need to spend more time with people like you to be like, yo, dude, you just don't need to do that, right?
Well, listen, nobody's perfect, right? It would be impossible to walk through your life living like that and walking on eggshells and thinking, I can't do this because I might re-injure a disc, right? You just have to be overall more intelligent about the things that you do. For me, especially exercise choices, and that's one of the things that we do at our clinic is we are the movement experts. So before, after, during that rehab process, we are looking at the way you move. You and I are different. So you might be able to do a strict barbell Romanian deadlift and not put as much pressure on your L5-S1 disc as I do. We're just built differently.
See,
Everyone's
it's weird
different.
that like RDLs for me
Yeah.
feel really good.
It could be. I mean, and that's the cool thing about what I do is that everybody's different. And that's what makes us different when people come to us from traditional chiropractor, traditional PT. It is such a different approach. And I really pride myself on being like the movement expert and just being able to recognize patterns and things that are unique to you and then dissecting it. But it's always fluid, right? Like each visit is different. And some visits we might be doing stuff in the gym. Some visits we might just be doing more stuff on the table. But it is completely crucial to the process to identify what is the factor for each person along the way, because no two patients are the same.
Talk to me about adjusting.
Okay, cool. So crack your knuckles, you get that pop. What does that sound? What is that crack when you crack your back? It is gas being released between two joint surfaces. When I say joints, I mean two bones. So your knuckles, you've got 3 little bones in the finger. There's 2 joints in between those 3 bones. So what happens over time is blood flow is not going into the joints as much, less oxygen, other gas builds up. So what we're doing is we're taking the pressure and releasing it from that joint. So you have little knuckles, little joints that run up and down your spinal column called zygapophyseal joints. I know it's just a buzzword, but basically what that means is that over time, all the weight of the world, the pressure, the muscle tightness, right? Like there is stuff that's built up around that area that can cause inflammation. Some people live their whole lives without feeling that way. They're super hypermobile where they're, flexible and things are just kind of moving at will. Other people, their discs are dehydrated, their muscles are not as fluid. So over time, pain develops as a symptom. And pain is the tip of the iceberg. Like pain is usually the thing that gets people to address something. But what you don't realize is that there are signs way before anything hurts. Right? Like when something hurts, there is stuff that's been building up there for a long time. Inflammation, tightness, weakness, like things that most people would just ignore, take Advil, you wake up the next day, it's gone. So I think that eventually when you have pain, you realize that something needs to happen. So it could be a combination of, the adjustment, right? Like releasing that gas from those joints too.
So that gas, but that I'm just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
That sound is the gas being released.
Correct.
So it has nothing to do with bones.
No, it is a little pocket of air that is sitting between 2 bones. So we're not like taking the bone and like breaking it, right? Like that would really hurt. There is also this theory of like bone out of place. Like old school chiropractors would say like, oh, this, you're super out of alignment. When I say out of alignment, it's millimeters. It's really small. Like it is not like your vertebrae is shifted over by an inch. That would be extremely painful. And also there are ligaments that keep the integrity of that joint pretty tight. So we're talking about like millimeters of space or lack of space. So really there can be some huge changes made by just doing the right work in the right places,
All right. So, and you're able to determine what kind of adjustment to make based on what?
The person's presentation is huge, right? A lot of adjustments are very similar because the spine is similar, right? Unlike what you and I were talking about with the exercise or the disc issues, we're all made pretty much the same, right? We have the same exact bones, the same number of ligaments, the same muscles in the same places. What's different is how you and I react to different treatments, right? Like you might be a bigger person, you might have a history of injuries where you might not be able to tolerate something. So there is a good benefit to having multiple tools in the toolbox, right? Like if everything looks like a nail, right? All you have is a hammer, right? So I try to be very specific with my adjustments. There are some people that come in that we do minimal adjustments, right? It's more soft tissue heavy, muscle treatment, rehab exercises. And then there's some people that really just, no matter what else we do, that adjustment is going to be the thing that really takes their pressure and pain off of the injury.
The one adjustment that I think most people are so accustomed to seeing is the neck adjustment, right?
Just like the Steven Seagal karate move. Yeah.
Would that adjustment, just getting that on a regular basis, is that beneficial just for anyone?
It's good for people who have tension headaches. That is probably the biggest thing that I use it for. Also, whiplash injuries, also torticollis, which is like a wry neck. You know when you wake up in the morning and you can't turn your head?
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, there is a lot of inflammation to the SCM muscles, but also the higher structures in the cervical spine. So one of the cool things that happens when you release that air from that joint and take the pressure off that joint is that there are these mechanoreceptors, these little tiny, almost like gauges of an engine that signal to the brain to allow motion to happen in those joint areas. So when we take pressure off of that joint, it actually allows for more motion, just allowing those joints to move a little bit better. So pain it's like nociception, that's C fibers, the spinal cord is like a highway. There's all these different nerve endings that go up and down. Mechanoreception, meaning like motion, is actually faster. It's a faster signal to the brain than the pain signal is. So that old analogy of, if you touch a hot stove, you burn your finger. What's the first thing you do?
Pull your finger away.
Yeah, you're gonna move your hand as quick as possible. You might even shake it. You might keep shaking it long after it stops hurting. Why? Because you are creating motion, and that is this weird innate reflex that is actually drowning out the pain signal to your brain. So while you're moving your hand, it is literally muting the signal saying that this hurts. And that's why people do it. So if you think about just that principle in general, restoring motion to a painful joint can also eliminate some of the pain factor.
So if somebody wakes up with one of those things where they just got a crank neck, they can't look to the left or the right, do you think you can actually fix that problem?
Again, I'm not...
Like immediately?
Yeah, I hate to say that too, but I'm not one of those chiropractors who's like, this is a quick fix, let's just adjust you and you'll be good. When you have an acute wry neck torticollis situation, it is usually something that happened overnight, and it's usually very irritating and painful, but also like quick to fix, because that is one of the things that responds so well to the right muscle release, the right soft tissue, and restoring motion in that joint. And those people do really well. And I hate saying that because it's bad for business, but those people, like, they come in and they're inflamed, they're in tons of pain, and they're usually like really good after one, maybe two visits.
I got to send Jonathan, my business partner, over to you because he tweaked his neck like 4 or 5 weeks ago. He's been battling with this thing. He thinks it's a disc thing. He's actually getting an MRI today. But I was like, dude, you got to go see Dr. Johnny.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it.
But he's also he's not a scientist, but he's a very analytical, sort of like very, very like detail oriented.
Yeah.
I guess it's left brain thinker.
So we'll get along.
And so, he's like, got to get the MRI. Can you crack my neck? Can you do that right here?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna disclaimer, because you've been a patient in my office, we've got all the stuff signed, waivers, like HIPAA compliant. Like, I'm not just walking people at studios, grabbing their neck and like snap it.
I don't.
But because we did all the right stuff in before this podcast, I'm happy to do it.
I don't think that I've actually. I don't think you did that when I was at your.
No,
office.
You were there. We looked at your lumbar MRI. We did a ton of work on your hips. And then that was the focus of the visit.
Can doing some work on, like, whatever, adjusting someone's neck, can that sort of waterfall down to the low back?
There is some science that shows that just overall nerve activation in the spinal cord is good for stuff head to toe. What I think it would affect more is if you have really bad lower back pain, okay,
got that.
Neural tension, meaning pulling on the nerve. So think about your spinal cord as like an elastic band, right? If you take your neck and you bend it forward, what are you doing? You're pulling on that elastic band, and that spinal cord literally runs from the tip of your brainstem all the way down to your butt. So if you have restriction in your neck and you're bringing your chin down, right, cervical flexion, you're pulling on that rubber band at the top of it, it is going to increase pressure in your lower back. So if somebody also has some restriction here, they might have lower back pain with neck movement. That's a real thing. So sometimes if you adjust someone's neck, you remove those local restrictions in that, and then they have more flexion and they feel less pressure. I would rather go to the site of the injury and work on the actual stuff that's going to be the most beneficial to you. But there is certainly a lot of neuro testing that shows that, if someone's got sciatica, lower back pain, like really bad neural tension, we can get them some relief by increasing their ability to do cervical flexion.
I've had some absolutely gut-wrenching sciatica, and it's happened to me twice in my life where, I've had sciatica. I think there's chronic back pain that affects nerves, and then there's like legitimate sciatica, which is truly the worst of the worst.
Yeah. So sciatica, for those listening, right? It is the sciatic nerve is the one that starts in your butt, goes all the way down the leg, and it is the big chunk of the nerve that basically feeds into all the muscles and skin of your lower back, of your leg. So when you have a lower back issue, okay, and you have a disc herniation or a disc bulge or impingement, the most common area is the last one, which is L5, lumbar 5, S1, right? So the most common disc to be herniated or compressed is the last one down, L5, S1. That nerve root feeds into the sciatic nerve. It is literally like the wire that plugs into the next wire, okay? So if you have compression up at the outlet, the lights are gonna be flickering, right? So people that have pain in the leg, a lot of times will come into me thinking that they have a hamstring issue or a leg issue, a knee issue, and it's coming from there. So the sciatica that you're describing, right, we can trace that back to your disc issue in your lower back. Without even seeing your MRI, I can, guess it's 90% going to be that L5S1, maybe L4, L5, but much more likely L5S1. And depending on the degree of that nerve issue, that is feeding into the sciatica. And that's why you're feeling it down a leg. It could be all the way to the foot, could be numbness, tingling, could feel like it's giving out on you. And that goes back to some of those neural compression signs that people come into the office with. And we have to just really assess and dissect, where do we think this is coming from? It can be possible to get a nerve impingement in your leg. Like there could be some sort of muscle thing that's causing that sciatica to be entrapped in the hamstring or the piriformis. There's piriformis syndrome, but it is typical to find an L5S1 disc issue causing leg pain.
Anybody who's experienced real sciatica that goes all the way from your butt down to your toes knows how just absolutely uncomfortable and terrible it is.
Did you have, dive into your symptoms a little bit, did you have the back pain first? Did you have the leg pain? Because I had mine was foot pain first. Numbness in my foot.
No, when I had an injury in 2012, so my injury was a combination of very poor deadlift form and in jiu-jitsu.
Okay, and you felt it like immediate. Was it a pop? Did you wake up like
pop? So when the injury actually took place, I was rolling jiu-jitsu and this guy sort of sandwiched me, and not only did I hear, but like it was a loud pop.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And that earlier that day I'd been doing deadlift, and this is like way before I really got into strength training. But all the other guys at jiu-jitsu were, lifting weights, and I was like, all right, I got to do a little bit of weightlifting, but I just had no idea what I was doing at that stage in my fitness journey. So that day in the gym, I felt like, ooh, that didn't feel good on my back. And then I went to roll that night, and boom, that injury happened. And then the next morning I couldn't move, and I was in excruciating pain from the back all the way down my leg. Felt like somebody was literally taking like a torch and like putting it on the side of my calf.
Yeah.
And I immediately went to the hospital because I was like, this is bad.
Yeah.
Did the MRI. All the doctors said I needed to get surgery. Refused to get surgery, did all sorts of witch doctor stuff. I did all sorts of crazy shit. But then ultimately, 8 weeks later, went back, got another MRI. That the fragment was gone, that was on the nerve that you can clearly see. And they gave me a cortisone shot, and boom, I was like, good.
Better, yeah.
That was good.
Cool.
And then that lasted for a while. I mean, it always creeps up, like in my QL and, in my, just like all sorts of spots on my typically in my upper glutes and my lower back, like are very sensitive, but rarely do I actually get sciatica. And then this past summer in July, I had tweaked something doing overhead work. I was working on my snatch, or I was working on shoulder to overhead. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I tweaked something in my right shoulder. And I was like, all right, man, I'm taking the week and I'm not gonna lift anything. I'm not gonna go heavy. I'm just gonna take the week and I'm just gonna do, concept 2 bike stuff. On the bike every day for like 45 minutes, nice and slow and steady pace. 3 days in, I woke up in the morning, sciatica all the way down my left side. So at first it was all the way down my right side. Now it was all the way down my left side and just took me out. I couldn't walk a block without being,
Did you have another MRI at that point?
I did.
And
that was the MRI that I showed you.
Would it, remind me, was it the same disc that you injured the first time?
Well, it was,
so
originally
level?
It was L405.
Yep.
Was the injury.
Going to the right side.
Going to the right side.
Yep.
And then I hadn't had an MRI in a long time.
Right.
They did an MRI. Now, obviously, because of the L4L5, almost bone on bone.
Yep.
L5S1 and L5S1 and L3L4 have degenerated.
Yeah. So obviously you take something and you remove its ability to shock absorb. What happens? The level above and below it now have to work much harder. So it is more likely to herniate another disc after part of that structure is gone. So we see that a lot of times where, people develop a secondary disc issue over time. But, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, like the older you get, the less likely, up till about 45, 50, it's still very likely. But once you get into that next stage of life, the discs are they're already dehydrated. They're really not going anywhere. It is more the pain from the arthritis, spine. What does your body do to start to stabilize something? Only thing it knows how to do, which is build. It builds bone. So when you lose the disc and there's not as much of that cartilage structure in between those two vertebrae, what they start to do is your body actually starts to lay down little fragments of bone. So the bones start to grow towards each other. It's called osteophyte. So you see these little bony bridges from vertebrae to vertebrae. They almost start to kind of fuse together. And you get people in their 60s, 70s, and you look at their MRI or their x-ray really, you see the bones are kind of growing together. So what does that mean? That means less movement available because there's literally bone fusing them together, okay? And that can be painful. Over time, those muscles now are fatigued. They don't really have as much flexibility in them. So the body is an amazing structure and it's just insane how we're wired, but it's like over time, your body only knows how to do what it's programmed to do. So you lose a disc issue, you lose a disc height, and then it just starts laying down bone because it's like, let me stabilize this.
If there's one area where whoever made us fucked up, it's the disc. It's in the discs.
Listen, you could go so many ways with this, right? But I've dissected the human body head to toe, and it is just.
You have?
Yeah, and that was part of my training and part of school. Cadaver lab every day after lunch. You got this body, this lifeless body, and you've got a textbook, and you know where things are supposed to be, and you've got some scalpel and a bone saw, and you're hacking into someone's shoulder to identify structures, pull out the rotator cuff. So probably one of the coolest days of my life was Anatomy 3 lab, and we had to take a bone saw and saw around the skull and pop it off like a soup bowl. And when you pop off the top of the skull, there is this dura mater that literally it's pressure built up. It just pops. It's the craziest thing. You get the bone saw like halfway through and all of a sudden it just goes, and you literally can pull the top of the skull off. The brain is not what it looks like on those cartoon characters. I thought it was gonna be like a Hey Arnold, like football, right? It's like putty. It's like putty. It's like this gelatin structure. It's like soupy, like it'll sip through your fingers. But the spinal cord is like perfectly attached to it. It's just like a little white rope. And I mean, we're talking about the nuance of these things. Like some of the nerves, the sciatic nerve, like we're talking about, it's thinner than my pinky, right? So you think about how powerful this little thing is. It's got to carry all this information from your brain to the spine to the muscle, say, kick this soccer ball or jump. And you watch like these athletes that do these things in these milliseconds, and then you realize like what their anatomy looks like underneath. And it is so insane how we're wired, how intricate things are and how perfectly mapped out everything is, like the way that things lay. It's like that's the only way it would have worked. And it's crazy. I obviously we could always be better. But it is insanely impressive what they're doing with science, to your point before with the disc stuff. it's trying to recreate what God made. It's like playing God, right? So we're getting closer, but I don't know if it'll ever be as good as the original hardware.
The original plan.
Yeah.
I want to, before we wrap this thing up, like I want to talk about habits, because this is the Creatures of Habit podcast. And I want to just, I want to talk about habits for people to potentially implement, to just be more mindful about ideally their backs, because I feel like back is probably the magnet for most injury and pain.
Low back pain is one of the number one, if not the number one thing that people see a primary care doctor for. 80% of people eventually see their primary care doctor for lower back pain.
So I want to talk about a few habits that people can implement into their day to use as a preventative and or a way to sort of subside potential pain on a daily basis. But I also want to talk about your morning routine and what you do on a daily basis to kickstart your day.
Cool. I was never a morning person, and I think that there's different levels to it, but when someone says that they're a morning person, I think that they like wake up, they're spry, they are energetic, they just run out the door. We know people like that. I think we probably know way more people like that than we don't. That's not me. I work late. People usually want to come to our clinic after 5 p.m. So I typically have dinner around 9. I'm usually struggling to get in bed by 10, 11. And I would love 8 hours of sleep. So if I can get in bed and get to sleep by midnight, that's a good day, right? Like I try to be in bed by 11. So my alarm goes off around 6, and I'm typically like I'm dead inside. Like I do not want to deal with the morning. It is still kind of dark in New York City in the morning, which is, today's May. So it's crazy. Like I think if I was living in Miami Beach and the sun was kicking into my window at 5 a.m., I'd be much more of a morning person, because that is a real effect, right? That circadian rhythm that develops. Like it is so much easier for me to get up and go in the summer when the sunlight's coming in. I'm just like, I'm missing the day. I'm like, I got to get out there, right? So for me in the morning, I like to start with exercise. It is just the time of day that works best for me. It is a great way for me to kind of set my intention for the day. I work hard. I get ready, I shower, I go to the clinic. So when I'm in the gym, I leave nothing on the table. I think to myself, this is my opportunity. Like this is when I'm gonna get it done. Once I get to the office, it's like thing after thing after thing. Next thing I know, I'm going to bed. So I use that mantra of like, this is my opportunity. This is my chance. Like get my butt out of bed. I'm not a self-starter. I need some caffeine. I need some sort of energy to get going. I usually have a little bit of something in my stomach, whether it's like an English muffin or half a banana, just something to kind of settle everything in, and then some caffeine, and then I get right into exercise. So for me, I am not the person that needs to be reminded to work out, and you clearly are not either. That is the best hour of my day, is when I'm able to just go move and listen to music or a podcast and not have to deal with the bullshit of the day or anything, anybody. It's another nice thing to do in the morning is no one's really bothering you yet. Like there's less distractions.
So what time do you end up getting to the gym typically?
Usually by 7 a.m.
Okay.
So I'm usually there around 7 and I'm done around 8:30. And then I head to the office between 9 and 10 a.m. And I work late. So usually I'm there till about 7, 8 o'clock at night. But in the morning, I need some sunlight, I need some caffeine, and right to the exercise.
So for years and years, I get up. I am an early riser.
You're like a 5 a.m.er, like birds.
I am now.
Yeah.
I am now. I mean, obviously, when I was in the restaurant business, I rarely was up past 6:30, but you know, I was going to bed much later than I am now. But today, like I was in the shower this morning at 5 o'clock, and I was saying to myself, you know, and I rarely start my day right away with a shower, but typically my day starts when I'm at home. I am one of these guys that have one of these long drawn out morning routines because it you know, and it's for me. It's not. I don't post about fucking jumping in the cold plunge or fucking sitting in front of the red light. Like, it's something that I do for me because it genuinely, and I'm a psychopath and an extreme human being. It genuinely makes me feel fucking good.
Yeah.
It genuinely, for me to have my hour and 15 to hour and 20 minute long step-by-step morning routine, like I just fucking love it. Yeah. And it's not like, I love it when I'm doing it. It's not like I'm like, whoa, I can't wait. It's like, I know that this is the system that I've set up for myself that is going to make me feel great and successful. Yeah. And so I didn't have my cold plunge. I stay in a hotel here. So in the morning here, typically I just go fucking right into a cold shower. And I was in the shower this morning thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I really just love doing this. Like this is how I like to do it. You know, it's something that I really love to do. And that's not for everyone, right? It's not for everyone. Back in the day, probably up until about 4 or 5 years ago, I was just like you, where like I would like get up. I'd get up early. And you know, I would have some caffeine and get to the gym as early as I could, because it was like truly the best part of my day. Like I love doing it. And then I was back home before 7 a.m. To take my kids to school. Yeah. Now, and I say this because I mean it, now I have understood that my fitness practice is why I am successful in my life. It is. Yeah. Actually. Like, my commitment to fitness has given me the ability to commit to everything else in my life. So now I think of my fitness as a fucking business meeting. Yeah. Like, it is part of my job as the CEO of running a wellness brand. And so I don't do it first thing in the morning. I do it a little bit later in the day. So I'll get my morning routine done. I'll chill with the fam. And then I get a few hours of work in. And then I go and train, because relieving some of that morning, like, let me get some work done, stress out of the way, makes me feel better. But I used to be like that. But it is when I was by myself, Warrior was just me, and I had no child, no employees, nobody to check on, right? That's exactly how I operated. I would wake up, because I'm not a morning person, so I'd have my big breakfast, my coffee. Okay, let me just get into the meetings, the emails, and I look forward to like taking the break in the day around 1, 2 o'clock when nobody else was at the gym, had the whole place to myself, and then shower, go back to the grind. But for me now, just the way that I'm operating different things and with the employees and stuff, it's just easier to kind of knock it out in the morning. Also, you hit the nail on the head. Being a father changes everything, right? So my kid is getting up at 5:30, 6 a.m., whether I want to or not. And, his mom and I split when he was born. So I'm 100% the parent 50% of the time. So it's no one else is getting him. It's just me. Yeah. So he's 2.5 and he's awesome. So now, I try to keep my routine the same on the days that he's with me and the days that he's not, so that I'm still getting up around the time that he would get up. And then, kind of starting my day that way, so that it's forced me now to be more serious about getting to bed at 10, not staying up late watching TV. I mean, I don't remember the last time I finished a movie. It's terrible. Like, somebody was asking me for series recommendations. I was like, dude, I haven't turned my Netflix on in like 3 months, But getting home from work, realizing that there's always gonna be more work to do. You're never gonna knock it all out. Staying up till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., getting things done, it actually works backwards. It kind of takes away from your recovery, from your sleep, and from, mental alertness the next day. So that's been a really big maturing point for me, is just realizing like how much I can really take on each day and what can wait till the next day without feeling stressed about it. I love that point. I could not agree more. Yeah. I do not work after 6 o'clock anymore. Yeah. At all. Yeah, but we used to. I mean, I'm sure you did. Yeah, it's like, there's days you sit there and people would, my ex would like beg me, like, come on, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm trying, waiting for you for the last 2 hours. I'm like, it's Monday. Like, I got to work on Mondays, right? We can fuck around on Sunday. But no, it's like, it is during the week. You got to have boundaries. You got to have a set time. And that's for me. Like, when I get home from work, I don't turn the computer on anymore. There's some stuff I'm working on my phone, but even then at like 10 o'clock at night, I'm like, lights got to be down. I got to, get in bed and at least like try to start unwinding. I think that we were made to sort of follow that, I mean, only in the last, whatever it's been, 200 years or 150 years has electricity been a thing where like the lights can stay on after dark, right? Yeah. There was fire, but you're not able to get much done with fire. Right. And so when it was dark out, humans really just wind down and stop working and spend time with family. Yeah. And I know for sure that has been one of the best things I've ever done for my life, because I did not have boundaries before 2018, 19. I just didn't have the shut off switch. I just didn't. Yeah. And like you said, I've now matured to a place where I could say, hey man, if you don't set a boundary for this, no one's going to set it for you, because you are your own boss. Yeah. And if you don't have it, you're just going to burn out. I'll admit I wasn't strong enough to do it on my own. It took me becoming a father and having to prioritize somebody else's needs over my own to be able to make that switch. Like, me too. If I wasn't a father, I don't think that I would have changed anything about the way that I was operating. I think I'd still be working until midnight, 1 a.m. because I could have, okay, I'll make it up tomorrow, I'll sleep a little bit later, I'll hit the gym a little bit later. Like, it never ends. So for me now, it's like, that's like a non-negotiable. Like, my son's gonna need me. That I have to be ready to go. I've got to be on my game. So I have to prioritize my health. I have to prioritize my mental sanity. And there's just things that
it's nice to be selfless. And I admit, like, I was not strong enough to make that change until I had to make it for him.
Just give us a few habits before we close this thing up for people to do that they can implement on a daily basis to really help prevent back issues. And if they're dealing with some back pain, a few things that they can do to help mitigate.
I think number one is maintenance care. What I mean by that is fixing things before they're broken. So I'm a huge proponent for preventative care, soft tissue work, stretching, exercise, chiropractic, obviously, physical therapy for issues that might seem kind of minor at the time. If it's minor, great. That means we can fix it quicker. We don't need to have you come in for 20 visits. We might be able to put you back together 3, 4, 5 visits, give you tools to fix things on your own and become more aware of a situation and prevent a larger injury, like something that, eventually can shut you down, be debilitating, be depressing, take years to fix, if ever fix. So I'm a huge fan of just kind of doing the little things right every day, coming up with a plan, whether it's exercise, whether it's like, getting 8 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, whatever, taking care of the little things before they become big problems. And that is something that comes with age. But, especially when you're playing sports growing up, college athletes, pro athletics, these guys and girls have access to 24/7 care. They can go to the athletic training center as soon as, whether something hurts or not, and get treated. When you get out in the real world, there is not somebody saying like, hey, come and check in. Let me look at your hamstring. Let me look at your foot. But people still like to train like they were playing college soccer, football, whatever. So I think that if you can just make a habit of addressing things first sign of danger, it is a much easier thing to fix and a much nicer, fun treatment plan.
Are there any stretches that you've just like learned to love over the years that you think are pretty general that people can just do?
Yeah, we were talking about the psoas, and I'm not sponsored by them, but the psoas is a muscle in that it's deep underneath your abdominal contents. It's below your gut, and it comes up into the lower back, and it attaches on the front of your lumbar spine. So it actually can kind of pull your lumbar spine forward. So when you sit all day, look at me right now, right? My hip is flexed. My spine is flexed forward. So what am I doing? I'm compressing my lower back and I'm shortening my hip flexor. So that's why you found relief with releasing the psoas, because if that muscle is in this position all day, it can become tight and it can be, something that's a problem. And then when you try to extend, stand up, go for a run, jump, it doesn't really have as much flexibility. So I think that becoming a proponent of stretching your hip flexors, getting into that area.
What's a good hip flexor stretch that you like?
There is a one kneeling stretch where one knee's down. You're kind of in a lunge position.
And then you're just putting
going forward, right? Like that old soccer stretch where you're on one knee. The biggest thing for that to do correctly is that a lot of people get in that position and they just lean forward. They lean from their spine. You have to really tuck your pelvis and be able to kind of like isolate that stretch, because if you're leaning forward with your lower back, you're not stretching your hip flexor. You're really stretching more lumbar area. So for me, getting that patient in that position, teaching them how to do a correct pelvic tilt, making them aware of where their spine should be at, right? Neutral spine, right? Not flexed forward, not extended backwards. Making sure that the stretch is going to the right place is something that is priceless. And a lot of people, they lay on the floor, they just kind of run through stuff and they're not actually doing anything. They feel better about it, but it's really not getting the right area. So if you've got lower back pain, learning how to do a really preventative, therapeutic, isolated stretch for the psoas is a good one.
Yeah, I'm not sponsored by psoas either. I mean, either. I just love their stuff, and the founder actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, like, I'm gonna give you a 50% off code for like your followers," and I was like, "Great." I've probably sold more psoas than other things because of how much I just love it. I love it. I feel like it's such a great tool. So I definitely do that. So you're saying potentially something that can get release the psoas. Obviously the psoas is an easy tool for that.
I'll give you another one that was really good for me when I had my disc issue. I was living in Baltimore at the time, and I was coming up to New Jersey to visit my family for the holidays. So without any traffic, it's like without about 3.5 hour car ride. And so with traffic, it could be 4, 5, 6 hours, and you're sitting in a car and it's brutal. So my lower back, after an hour or two, I couldn't sit still. So I did some research and I found a really good pillow that is like a cylinder, and it's just a little tiny rolled up pillow with a strap around it. It goes around the front seat of my car, and it helps to kind of give me some more lumbar support by pushing me into extension. just disallowing me to be slunched forward, and it really does make a big difference for me in the
What
car
is
rides.
it? Can we share it? Can you share
It's
it?
called a McKenzie roll. McKenzie, McKenzie. McKenzie is a guy that developed a whole protocol around back pain, disc pain, and it's extension-based exercises to rehydrate some of the disc issues. Those are really good for certain types of disc herniations. If you give that to the wrong person, it's going to make it worse. So another part of my job is figuring out what the right thing for that person is. So McKenzie protocols and exercises are huge with some disc population. But the McKenzie roll for me was just a really easy way to kind of take away from some of that position in my car, because I found that those long car rides were just one of the top 2 or 3 things that killed me. So that has been really good for me. I don't drive barely ever at this point, like I'm in the city. But if you know that something is a problem, your desk chair, your work setup during COVID, that was great for business. People were stuck home working on a bar stool, leaned over their kitchen counter. I had one girl tell me that, she sent me a picture of it. It was her laptop propped up on a bunch of Amazon delivery boxes because she was trying to get the right height. So she was like working like this and was coming in with all sorts of neck issues and back issues. And I was like, I'm sorry, you got to spend some money. We have to get you a proper work from home setup. And this was in April of 2020. Now, millions of people dealt with that. So there's a huge, I wish I invested, there's a huge shift to ergonomic stuff because now how people work from home, right? Yeah. I'd say it's up 500% than it was in 2019. Oh, yeah. So now there's a huge industry based around it, but at the time there really wasn't that many options. So
do you have any brands that you like?
I don't. So maybe someone's got to sponsor me at this point, right? But no, I have the McKenzie roll in my office chair because I just found that it was proper. There's a whole industry, and that's something that we do with people too when they come to the clinic at Warrior, is looking at some of the ergonomic stuff. Not everybody does well with the old laptop monitor has to be eye level. It's different for everybody. There's general rules, but you really need to break down that person's specific situation and come up with a plan.
One last question that I have, and then we got to go, is sleep. So I, unfortunately, and I didn't even know that this was a problem, but I am unfortunately a stomach sleeper.
Okay.
I love sleeping on my stomach. Okay. I've tried, and I never thought that was a thing. I never thought that there was that being a stomach sleeper was going to affect my lower back. Now, when I think about it, of course, I've got a pillow. I'm in extension pretty much all night long. And so what I've started to do is I've tried sleeping on my back, no shot. I've tried sleeping on my side, not really working for me. What I've started to do is just put a pillow or 2 under my hips so that my back is not in full extension every night and it's more neutral. But can you just talk to us about sleep position?
If you're a side sleeper, if you can get on your side and that can work for you, putting a pillow between your knees to take some pressure off of your hips would be good. If you are a stomach sleeper, I would expect you to wake up with some neck pain because you can't.
I never wake up with neck pain, but I always wake up with back.
Yeah, I don't know where your face goes. Does it go in the pillow or is it kind of?
It goes on the side like that. Typically.
Okay, yeah. So some people can get away with it. I can't, but it's got to go somewhere. You got to breathe, right? So if you can get comfortable on your side, pillow between your knees, that's good for people with lower back pain. You can be a stomach sleeper. There's some people that's actually an okay position for them if their preference is extension. Not everybody is an anti-extension person. Some people, if given the right mattress or the right, body setup, right, they're able to do it. But I think it's more about just getting some deep sleep because that helps with recovery and rehydrates those tissues. When you're sleeping, when you're in REM sleep, your whole body goes into this kind of state of recovery where everything's, I think of Bob the Builder, it's just these little things kind of just fixing whatever they can, right? So I think that as long as it's not painful during sleep and you're waking up and getting out of REM sleep, that it's still okay if you're a side sleeper or a stomach sleeper. But obviously, look, no one's perfect. If I
is sleeping on the back the best though?
The best, pillow between, underneath your knees, a little bit of bend in the hamstrings, like a dead person, shoulders relaxed, neck.
Is that neutral. How you sleep?
I wish. I start there and then I just eventually go on my side. But I've kind of learned to kind of prop some stuff up so that I can't go full on my stomach.
So are there any tips that you can give for people to try to figure out a way to get to sleep on their back? If it's just not natural,
I found that putting a pillow underneath my knees so that they can't extend all the way, that they're a little bit bent, it kind of helps to prevent rolling to the side. Like your knees are now, it's easier to roll. If you laid it flat on the floor and your legs were straight, it's easier for you to roll, right? And if you bend your knees, you kind of, it's harder to kind of roll on that shoulder. So I found that just giving my knees a little bit of elevation, it's a little bit harder for me to like subconsciously like go full turn on my shoulder. But yeah, I mean, that's the ideal position to kind of just sleep like a mummy, like a dead person. But I know that most people just, it's not comfortable or practical.
Dude, we've covered so much stuff, man. Like I can't wait to listen to this podcast so I can just make sure that I retain everything. For the listener, how can they follow along your journey?
So my handle for everything is Dr. Johnny, just DRJOHNNY, Dr. Johnny. So Instagram, Facebook, Warrior NYC is our clinic, right? So there's an Instagram there, there's TikTok, there's Google. I've been putting more stuff on YouTube because I have this theory that like TikTok's gonna get banned, then everyone's gonna like run to the YouTube stuff. So I've been trying to put more on YouTube, even though it's like, I think it's for the demographic of like my dad's age. So yeah, I've been putting content out there. Instagram for me has always been the easiest because I think as a chiropractor, what I do, you can show it off really easy in about 10, 15 seconds, or at least give people a little bit of a bite-sized clip of what we're doing in the clinic and make it, kind of cool and realize that like, dude, I'm just like you. Like I work out, I've got tattoos. Like I'm not this, there's no white coat syndrome. There's no like, I'm not this scary doctor that like you should avoid coming to see. Like I become friends with a lot of my patients. I get it. I'm a real straight shooter. So I've been doing it for 10 years, which is crazy. Like I remember when I was a new guy, nobody wanted to see me because I was the guy right out of school that was wearing like the cheesy like Under Armour polo and the khakis, but come a long way since then. And hopefully we're just gonna keep doing this thing.
So anybody who is in or around New York City or travels here and wants to get an adjustment, where are the practices?
Flatiron, New York, 23rd and 5th, and then the East Village, 10th and A. So that's for now. I've got some other stuff in the works, but yeah, man, I think as long as we just keep focusing on the right people, making it about them and just getting them better, like that word of mouth stuff has been huge for us.
Brother, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Always good seeing you. And I wish you were closer so that we can make a case study out of you, but I'll continue to do my best to help you. And
well, I'm gonna try to make it my job to get down here every 2 weeks to come and see you.
There's other things in New York to do. We can make a weekend out of it or something, right?
Guys, I really hope you took the value out of that podcast as much as I did. I mean, I literally just listened to Dr. Johnny talk about back stuff. I mean, I'm sure if you're listening to this, like Johnny said, 8 out of 10 people really, really struggle with back issues. And it's not I'm a guy who has had severe back issues. And I know for sure that it sucks when I'm in the throes of it, but I know it's not like doomsday. I know that there are ways around it. And I know I'm also going to start paying a little bit more attention to just being smarter about how I move in my training. I think I'm going to be sharing a lot more about that because I tend to go really, really hard all the fucking time. And I know that as I age, that's probably not the smartest decision. But I'm also going to start spending time with Johnny because I really think that it would make sense for me at this stage of my life to have an appointment with a chiropractor who also is really, really expert in movement to start working with me so that I can just be better. So definitely check out what Johnny's doing. And if you would be so kind and write us a nice review and a 5-star rating, share this podcast with a friend, share it with a family member, share it with anybody who you think may be struggling with back pain. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Until the next one, y'all. Peace.